There's a brand new series on Disney Plus Hotstar. It is a Hulu original out of the US. It's called Paradise. It is created by the same guy who created This Is Us, Dan Fogelman. But this is, of course, a very different sort of series. Now, Bahir, I'm not sure if we should give away the twist, although the twist is given away pretty quickly in the show. So I think we'll avoid talking about it, except to say that there is a little bit of a twist at the end of the first episode.
Yes, okay. When you said happened really quickly, I thought you meant in the beginning of the first episode. No, it happens at the end of episode 1.
We can talk about what happens in the beginning of the first episode because that's in the trailer.
Yes.
And that's the general plot of the show. But the show is called Paradise. It is led by Sterling K. Brown and James Marsden, and it is set in a place. And Sterling K. Brown plays a Secret Service agent who is tasked with protecting the president, played by James Marsden. Highly unbelievable because no president has ever looked that good.
Or be that charming.
But that's besides the point.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the very first episode, we discover the president has been murdered.
Moided.
And there is an investigation and all kinds of strangeness happening. Why was he murdered? What is missing from his safe? What is going on? So it is a bit of a murder mystery. However, like we said, there is a twist at the end of the first episode. Now, that twist isn't necessarily crucial to the plot, but I think it actually makes the series a lot more interesting than it should be. Like, I went into this going, okay, it's all right. Sterling K. Brown is excellent as always.
Yep.
James Marsden is charming and excellent as always.
Yep.
We're going to get a little murder mystery conspiracy theory thing. And then boom, I'm like, oh,
hang on.
That makes this show something different.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it's like I think the reveal isn't that big a thing. You know what I mean? It's not that...
It isn't a ha gotcha.
No, it's not. But also at the same time, it's not that it changes a lot in terms of what the show will be or is. It's still essentially a political intrigue type murder mystery type thing.
However, when you throw in this high concept...
Yes.
It suddenly becomes a lot more interesting because you view all of these characters through a different lens because of their circumstance.
There's a word that I want to use that I'm trying to avoid, but it adds a little spice to it. It doesn't fundamentally change what the show is because, like I said, it's the death of a president. It's a political murder mystery. There's going to be, power grabbing, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, the twist adds a nice little spice to it that I think makes it more than just a run-of-the-mill drama.
Absolutely. For me, it elevates it from a 6 to a 7 right up to an 8. Because I found myself suddenly a lot more engrossed in it. And by the time I got to episode 4, we've seen the first 4 episodes. By the time I got to episode 4, I was all in. And only because I am very invested in these characters now.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
There was an interesting question that came up in our Ask Us Anything, and we'll address it on the episode of Ask Us Anything, but I thought it's worth talking about in this review because the person was referring to Paradise, and they were asking us how we felt about the flashbacks, because we have often complained about the use of flashbacks, and how lazy it is with regards to writing a show or writing a movie, especially if something starts in medias res, and then it goes 2 weeks earlier.
Sorry, just quickly. Define and explain in medias res.
Oh, in the middle of the action.
Yes.
So when a show starts in the middle of the action and 2 people are fighting on top of a truck and one person gets knocked off, everything suddenly pauses and it goes 2 weeks earlier.
Sort of like the how did we get here thing.
How did we get here, guys? And I find that incredibly lazy unless it's done properly. And there are various examples in shows like The West Wing where it's done incredibly well. Like the season finale of the first season of The West Wing, where Bartlett is speaking at a town hall, gunshots go off when they're trying to exit, and then the title credits roll, and it flashes back to the days before this town hall meeting.
Yeah.
Like, that is supremely well written.
Yes.
Now, I think Paradise is very well written because it doesn't use flashbacks as a way to withhold information from you. So in this situation, it is essentially almost playing out like two separate timelines, the past and the present. It's very similar to Lost in that we're learning about the lives of these characters through these flashbacks. And they happened at the time before this, which is all we will say. But the flashbacks didn't bother me in this one. I thought it was actually pretty good writing.
It's something you said earlier. It is almost two parallel storylines, right? There are two parallel timelines that are happening, and the flashbacks are used that way. I don't like it when a flashback is used as a shortcut, as a lazy way to introduce a new piece of information. It's like, oh, wait, he can shoot a bow. How did that happen? I feel like that kind of flashbacking is lazy. But I think the way they've done it here, in that, like you said, it's almost like a separate timeline. Not like a parallel universe thing, but just it's a separate storyline, right? It's the B plot to the story's A plot kind of thing almost. And I really, really appreciate that. I really, really like that.
I have to say, when shows like this come from people like John Wells or Dan Fogelman, like people who cut their teeth on network television, you really can tell how seasoned they are as storytellers. Because even in this show, yes, there is an overarching A plot that stretches across the murder mystery, right? However, every episode still focuses on a specific character and their individual stories, and it feels very much like how traditional serialized television used to run. Each episode does its own thing and tells its own story without forsaking the main plot that's going on. So despite this being only 8 episodes and not 22 episodes, it feels very much like an old school TV show. Episode 4, for example, I don't know if you've seen it yet, Bahir.
I have.
Completely fucking heartbreaking.
Oh, just the fucking worst.
I didn't even know how they were going to end that episode or this person's story. And I was just like, this is the worst. Like, in the best possible way.
But you know what is interesting as well? I think you brought up a good point. And this is something that I felt as I was watching the first 3 episodes. In that, because these filmmakers, these writers, these producers are so used to telling a story over 22 episodes, when they're given just 8 or 10 or 12, it feels like, I wouldn't say rushed, but everything's on a much tighter timeline.
Yes.
So the thing that happens at the end of episode 1 could very well easily happen halfway through the season. Like, they would stretch out the president, right? Because you want more James Marsden in present time. You want more of the mystery of what is going on. I think by dropping it at the end of episode 1, because they know they don't have filler episodes, they have to get to it. What happens at the end of episode 4? I was shocked. I was like, wait, really already? You know what I mean? Like, you would think that that's the kind of thing that would happen to end season 1 or to be the mid-season break cliffhanger. But no, it's episode 4, which I guess in an 8-episode series is mid-season, I guess. But that's kind of what I mean, right? That because they don't have, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, because they don't have time to faff about, they have to get to it. They get to the meat of the action and they just keep going. And I thought that was great.
But for me, it really boils down to the kind of writing that they're doing in the show. And 4 episodes out of 8 has me very invested in the story. And I think it's a very interesting story. So it's more than just a murder mystery. It is a study on society, and especially American society. So it comes at a very interesting time as well. And I'm very into this show.
I'm completely digging it. I think there is a real, strangely enough, there's a real cool factor here that I'm really liking there. And I think that just comes from Sterling K. Brown's cool factor. I think without the twist, I would not like it as much, because I did not like This Is Us. And I mean, I'm a heartless bastard, so things like that tend to bounce me off. So I feel like I'm kind of allergic to stuff like that.
But what's interesting is, I think what makes Dan Fogelman quite an interesting character or an interesting writer is, if you look at This Is Us and if you look at Paradise, despite being completely different stories, there is one key through line in that I think he is a master at manipulating our emotions.
Right.
That's what he did with every single fucking episode of This Is Us, right?
Sure.
The fans of This Is Us would cry at the end of every episode. There would be some emotional twist, some dagger through the heart. And he doesn't just save it for like mid-season breaks or season finales. No.
Yeah.
He does it at every episode.
Yeah.
And I think he's really mastered the soap opera in that sense. But what is interesting with Paradise is that he's kind of brought it into this as well. Like, there are a lot of overstuffed character developments in this show, but I don't have a problem with it. Like, in the sense that, oh, what's going on between these two characters? Oh, is this person sleeping with that person? Who's lying? Who's telling the truth? And there are all of these interesting emotional beats. What's wrong with his father? What did he do? Why did they have a falling out? Like, all of that stuff is there. And so I think he still brings that same skill set as a writer to this, despite this being a completely different genre.
You said the key word there that I was struggling with, which is soap opera. This is a soap opera, but in the best possible way, I think.
Yeah.
It's cheesy enough that you will get sucked in, but it's not so cheesy that you will cringe at it. It's really hard to talk about it without spoiling. I mean, it's a major spoiler, but it's not that it would ruin the show, I think is what it is. So we're avoiding it only because we want to give everybody the best sort of possible access to it.
The spoiler or the twist in this show isn't a sugar situation, the show on Apple TV Plus with Colin Farrell. It isn't that. Because that almost anchored what the show was and is going to be moving forward.
Yes.
The twist in this is almost a by the by. It sets up an environment in which this story takes place.
Yeah.
And because of that, I don't think it is weighed down by it.
And I think also because it's like you said, it's the high concept. It is not the purpose of the show. It is not the key in the show. It just makes it different enough for you to want to tune in and get sucked up by the story that they will eventually tell, right? The twist isn't the reason for being.
I had no idea. I was looking up Dan Fogelman. I had no idea he wrote Tangled.
Oh.
He also wrote the first Cars movie. He wrote Crazy Stupid Love.
Wow.
So he's got a pretty great track record. He's also an executive producer on Only Murders.
Oh, okay.
He also did a very, very short-lived show that I enjoyed way back in the day, 10 years ago. It was called Gallivant. Do you remember that show?
Oh my God, I love Gallivant.
Right?
Oh my God, Gallivant was so great.
He
so
was
disappointed.
the creator showrunner of Gallivant. Only ran for 2 very short seasons. I think that was another show that just was ahead of its time. It was so good. All right, check out Paradise. The first 4 episodes are now streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar. We're really digging it. I really want to know how they end this show. I don't know if it's a limited series or if there's plenty of room to go into season 2. So who knows what's coming on that front. Let us know what you think once you've seen it. You know how to reach out. We're on Instagram on GogglerMY. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.